Week number 12 of the 2025 fantasy football season came to a close last night on Monday Night Football with an interception fest between Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers and Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers. In today's video, we are going to be breaking down my week number 13 running back start or sit decisions for every single matchup of the week, whether you should start or sit the running backs in all of these games, as well as where I believe the running backs will finish at the end of the week. If you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, make sure you do hit that subscribe button down below like it owes you some money. I would like to wish you guys a happy Thanksgiving. I hope you guys all have a great one. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 13 running back start or sit decisions for every single matchup of the week. We begin with the Thanksgiving slate on Thursday, the first game at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Green Bay Packers at the Detroit Lions. Now, Josh Jacobs was listed as limited on Monday's estimated practice report. He wanted to play last week, but ultimately got denied, like someone trying to score on Scott Sterling. This game being on Thursday does definitely throw a wrench into things as we sit here on Tuesday, though. I would expect him to play. If he plays, you are obviously going to start him. Prior to his injury in week number 11, he scored a touchdown or more in 6 straight games. Over that 6-game stretch, he scored 9 total touchdowns. So while the Lions are the third worst matchup for running backs on a per game basis, Jacobs would be a high-end RB2 for me. In the scenario where he misses, Emmanuel Wilson would slot into a similar spot, as the man beat down the Vikings defense last week with 28 carries for 107 yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as 2 receptions for 18 targets. If Jacobs is in, Emmanuel Wilson will go back to the bench to get his 6-ish touches. Now we move to the Detroit Lions. Now Jahmyr Gibbs put the Giants defense into the walls of Jericho last week as the RB1. The man scored 55.1 PPR points, 15 rushes for 219 yards and 2 touchdowns, with 11 receptions on 12 targets for 45 yards and another touchdown. 3 straight games as a top 10 running back. When these two teams played back in week number 1, the Lions offense was bad and Gibbs was still able to finish as the running back number 13. So while this is not the best matchup for running backs, as the Packers defense is the 10th worst matchup for RBs on a per game basis, I expect Jahmyr Gibbs to run a train on them. He is a locked and loaded top 3 option. Now, while Jahmyr Gibbs was hitting the Giants defense with the 619 Rey Mysterio, David Montgomery wasn't doing diddly squat, just 6.7 PPR points outside the top 24. At the running back position, 5 rushes for 18 yards and 3 receptions on 3 targets for 19 yards. Now, this is a game that got out of hand early, as the Giants were actually in the lead for a majority of the game. The first 3 quarters, the Giants were winning. So the Lions ultimately pull out the win in overtime. So in that kind of a game script, David Montgomery will never be successful. This week, he will be in a much more competitive game, so he should get more looks. Ultimately, though, based on what we have seen this season, and based on this not being the best matchup for running backs, he's just a break glass in case of emergency running back 3 start. Now we move to the Kansas City Chiefs at the Dallas Cowboys, the 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time game on Thanksgiving, the best game on Thanksgiving in my opinion. Now, Isaiah Pacheco was listed as a full participant in estimated practice on Monday, which would end his 3-game absence from his knee injury. And according to Andy Reid today, Isaiah Pacheco is back. When healthy, Isaiah Pacheco has been fool's gold. And with Kareem Hunt seemingly seeing a majority of the goal line work, sure, maybe Pacheco could get a touch on the goal line in this game. I just really think that the ball is going to go to Kareem Hunt in the red zone scenarios. And with Pacheco coming off injury, to me, it just seems almost impossible to make any justified argument to actually start him. Now, without Pacheco, Kareem Hunt has been on fire, a touchdown or more in 4 straight games. And even with Pacheco back, Kareem is a guy that can find the end zone. So while he will be a shell of what we saw last week, getting 30 carries up against the Colts for 104 yards and a touchdown, as well as 3 receptions on 3 targets for 26 yards, with his touchdown upside being high and the 9th best matchup for running backs, he is a high-end RB3 for me on the week. If Pacheco wasn't playing, then we'd be banging the drum for him as a high-end RB2, but that obviously is not the case. Again, Isaiah Pacheco, I still do believe in Isaiah Pacheco deep down, but it doesn't really feel like the team does. And if he's not going to get the goal line touches like we talked about, he is a clear sit. Now, the Cowboys made a miraculous comeback up against the Eagles last week, which was crazy to watch as the Eagles looked like they were going to cruise to victory, and then they forgot how to play football in the second half. Javonte looked decent again, but nothing to write home about for fantasy purposes. 20 carries for 87 yards and 2 receptions on 3 targets for 14 yards. 3 straight games without a touchdown for Javonte, but I would expect that to turn soon. Sadly for Javonte, though, I don't think he gets lucky this week like that Pharrell song. I'm up all night to get lucky. It's also Robin Thicke is in that song. The Chiefs are the 5th worst matchup for running backs and completely shut down Jonathan Taylor last week. So Javonte is a low-end RB2, teetering on being a high-end RB3. Bad matchup for Malik Davis mixed with the fact that we likely only see him get 2 to 4 touches. Leave him on your waivers. Now we got the final game on Thanksgiving, 8:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Cincinnati Bengals at the Baltimore Ravens. Now I know we glazed Jahmyr Gibbs earlier, but honestly, I think the showing by Chase Brown was just as impressive on Sunday. Now I understand that Chase Brown didn't even come remotely close to putting out the numbers that Gibbs did, but given the matchup being as rough as it is up against the Patriots, he had the best showing of any running back against the elite Patriots run defense this season. 19 carries for 107 yards with 2 receptions on 4 targets for 23 yards as a high-end running back too. Now, this offense gets Joe Burrow back this week, and Chase Brown really started to take off when Joe Flacco took the reins of the offense. But at the end of the day, with how hot Chase Brown has been with 15 plus points in 4 straight games in full PPR in the 12th best matchup for running backs on a per game basis, Chase Brown is a mid-range running back 1 for me this week. Now, Samaje Perine has been out since week number 9 up against the Bears with a high ankle sprain. In estimated practice on Monday, he practiced in full. If he does return, it could somewhat hurt Chase Brown, but I would assume even if Perine was to play, he is just far from 100%, so don't think he will get a workload enough to truly cut into Chase Brown's workload, so I would not touch him with a 10-foot pole, and if P. Ryan misses, I'm not going to play Taj Brooks either. Even with Lamar Jackson on the struggle bus over the last 2 weeks, Derrick Henry has been blowing out the back of defenses back-to-back games as a top 8 running back with 20-plus points in each showing. Last week, he had his second-best game of the year up against the Jets at home in Baltimore, 21 carries for 64 yards and 2 touchdowns with 2 receptions on 2 targets for 24 yards. Those touchdowns were virtually automatic in that game. You knew the second that the ball was handed to him, he was going to score. Every year we talk about how Derrick Henry is a cheat code down the stretch of the season, and that appears to be the case yet again this year. So in the best matchup for running backs on a per-game basis, I got Derrick Henry as a must-start top 5 option on the week. Keaton Mitchell has appeared to kind of take the RB2 spot in this Ravens offense away from Big Justice Hill, but ultimately he won't see remotely enough touches to be start-worthy, and Justice Hill also hasn't fully disappeared, right? He's still going to see snaps. So while I think Mitchell is a very talented player, even in a wet dream matchup here, we already know who's getting the ball, and it's Mr. Tractorcito Derrick Henry. Now we move to Black Friday, the Chicago Bears at the Philadelphia Eagles, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Before we break down this game in depth and the rest of the matchups at the running back position, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends, our partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog and sign up using promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description, you receive a free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus funds, as well as if you play $5 in the pick'em, you'll receive an additional $100 in bonus funds or in bonus entries. How does the pick'em work? It's incredibly simple. You make at least 2 picks on the players higher or lower. If those picks hit, you get paid. If you do multiple other picks, then the payout will be higher, but all of the picks need to hit. Make sure you guys do check that out. Promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description. Now, DeAndre Swift had his revenge game this week on deck up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Swift was down bad last week up against the Steelers, 8 rushes for 15 yards with 1 reception on 1 target for 14 yards. The week prior, he was struggling up against the Vikings as well as the running back 31. Now he faces an Eagles defense that is the 16th best matchup for RBs on a per game basis, but they definitely have been playing a lot better as of recently. So the panic alarm is definitely sounding big time on DeAndre Swift as Kyle Monangai continues to see the red zone touches and has scored now in 3 straight games. Monangai even out-touched and out-snapped Swift last week. I don't think it's time to wave the white flag on DeAndre Swift and completely be done with him, but I am definitely very concerned at this point. He is a high-end running back number 3 for me on the week. Now, unless Kyle Monangai continues to just score a touchdown every single week, then his production will fall. He has scored it now in 3 straight games and has yet to crack the top 20 at the running back position in any of those games. And with Swift in, I just do not feel comfortable playing Kyle Monangai. For the Philadelphia Eagles, Saquon Barkley has been down bad in 3 straight games. While his production hasn't necessarily sunk your team's metaphorical battleship, it has been brutal compared to your expectations coming out of the bye week. The Eagles offense got whiskey dick in the second half up against the Cowboys last week in Jerry's World, and Saquon Barkley was a mid-range running back too. 10 carries for 22 yards with 7 receptions on 8 targets for 52 yards, 3 straight games with less than 14 PPR points, and at some point, you just have to drop him down the rankings. You are still going to play Saquon, but holy fuck is it frustrating. Kevin Patullo has left his brain at home now in 3 straight showings, and this offense has me more angry than Wreck-It Ralph. The Bears are a great slump buster matchup as they allow the 11th most points to running backs on a per game basis, but I thought the exact same thing up against the Cowboys, who are a better matchup, and still Saquon shit the bed in that game. He is still a high-end RB2 for me though. Tank Bigsby and Will Shipley will split the RB2 duties in Philadelphia. Neither guy is even really guaranteed to get more than a touch weekly. Nothing to see here. They are clear sits. Now we got the San Francisco 49ers at the Cleveland Browns, the first game on the Sunday slate, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, even when Brock Purdy plays like Geno Smith up against the Carolina Panthers, we got the 49ers at the Cleveland Browns. When Brock Purdy just plays abysmal, when he looks like he's in a Raiders uniform and his name was Geno Smith, CMC still eats as the RB2 on Monday Night Football up against the Panthers. 24 carries for 89 yards and a touchdown, as well as 7 receptions on 7 targets for 53 yards. He has been a top 10 running back every single week this season outside of 1 game. I fully understand that the Browns defense is amazing, and this is only the 24th best matchup for running backs on a per game basis, but Christian McCaffrey is simply a different breed. It doesn't matter how good or how bad the defense is that he is going up against, he is going to smash them. This week against the Browns will be no different. He is a locked and loaded top 4 running back for me on the week. Brian Robinson may be one of the best handcuffs in fantasy football. He looks great most of the time that he touches the ball, but with CMC being a workhorse running back, you cannot play Brian Robinson with Christian McCaffrey healthy. For the Browns, I absolutely get annoyed watching the Browns when they get all the way to the red zone. It's like, wow, things are looking good. Maybe Shedeur can throw, Harold Fannin a nice touchdown. Maybe Jerry Jeudy, I know he absolutely fucked over Shedeur Sanders on that one play, but it is what it is. Maybe he'll score a touchdown. But the Browns just adore. They love taking their quarterback out to run the Wildcat in the red zone and let Judkins run it on in. The dude spread the Raiders defense like Moses split the Red Sea last week. 16 rushes for 47 yards and 2 touchdowns as a low-end RB1. Now, he did miss points of the game due to hitting his head on the field in the second quarter, but then he ultimately was able to return. Based on the fact that he returned in that game, pretty safe assumption would be that he will be good to go up against the 49ers, who allow the 22nd most points to RBs on a per-game basis. Shedeur definitely had the offense looking very good in that game, but I can't fully glaze him as, that was just the Raiders. Can't give him the gawk 9,000 special just yet. This is a spot where they will be trailing, which is far from the ideal game script for Quinshon Judkins. This week feels more like a mid-range RB2 finish for him compared to a top 12 finish. Now, Dylan Sampson had that huge catch for a touchdown, which elevated him to finish as a low-end RB1, which just goes to show you how low the kind of scoring was for the running back position last week. Outside of that, he didn't really do much and was elevated by the injury of Judkins. So with Judkins seemingly good to go, I don't even think you can guarantee more than 3 touches in this spot, so he would be a clear sit. Now we got the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Tennessee Titans. Travis Etienne Jr. is on fire like his name was the Human Torch. 4 straight games since the bye week with 15 plus PPR points. Last week was his best game on the season in Arizona against the Cardinals. 15 rushes for 86 yards with 3 receptions on 4 targets for 30 yards and a touchdown. The Titans allow the 4th most points to RBs on a per game basis. So a Travis Etienne slamming defenses on a weekly basis with Travis Etienne shining bright like a diamond. Etienne is a must-start top 12 running back for me on the week as a low-end RB1. Bishal Tutin's touches and production bounces around more than a bandwagon fan. Since the bye week, RB 24, 56, 20, and 51. Based on that pattern, he should be a top 24 running back this week, but with Etienne playing at such a high level right now, I would find it very highly unlikely that Tutin sees enough touches to be productive here. Leave him on your bench. Now, I am so sick and tired of the Tennessee Titans. I understand that Cam Ward looked good last week, but if you are a Titans fan, I am sure you wish you could just, act like real life was Madden and just sim to the end of the season so you don't have to watch this sorry-ass team. Cam Ward did have his best game of the season, like I said, up against Seattle, so things are definitely promising for the future, right? Cam Ward has shown multiple flashes this season. He had a very good game last week, so I'll give him all the credit in the world. But I would rather dolphin dive directly into a cactus over playing these Titans running backs. Tajay had 3 rushes for 4 yards last week with 4 receptions on 5 targets for 21 yards. Tony Pollard had 11 rushes for 20 yards with 4 receptions on 5 targets for 21 yards. So in the 6th worst matchup for RBs on a per game basis, with your guess being as good as mine as to which running back sees more touches on this team this week, in a spot where you are far from guaranteed to succeed, there is no need to play either Tajay Spears or Tony Pollard. Now we move to the Houston Texans at the "This is our Colts, this is our team, we bleed blue. This is our Colts, whether win or lose, we love them. For the shoe, beat the Texans." I just stole Seth's whole flow right there. We almost got the whole song out there. So for the Indianapolis Colts, Jonathan Taylor has been, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the best 3 picks you could have made in your fantasy draft this summer. So even with his last 4 games being RB1 in Week 8, less than 10 points in Week 9, RB1 in Week 10, and less than 10 points coming out the bye up against the Chiefs, and while that has been more frustrating than having your mom teach you how to do math as a child, Taylor will bounce back. 16 carries for 58 yards and 2 receptions on 3 targets for 8 yards at Arrowhead last week. It was a tough matchup, right? Just 8.6 PPR points. This week, he's got the 20th best matchup for running backs up against the Texans, who just got deep-dicked by James Cook last week. I expect Jonathan Taylor to finish as a top 4 back this week, and you are going to fire him up with supreme confidence. JT is one of the true workhorse running backs in the NFL, which leaves Amir Abdullah and Tyler Goodson to combine for less than 10% of the snaps more than likely this week. No need to play or roster either of those guys. For the Houston Texans, Woody Marks has been down bad over the last 2 games. Coming off a RB11 finish up against the Jaguars, he has failed to score over 8 PPR points now in back-to-back games. Though this is very much his backfield at this point, 69% of the snaps. Very nice, I like, compared to 22% for 9-inch Nicholas Chubb. So while things haven't gone great recently, we have seen the upside show up multiple times this season. We have seen the flashes. So in the 19th best matchup for RBs on a per game basis, I got him as a mid-range running back number 2. I will always deep down be a believer in Nick Chubb, but at this point in the season, this man is useless. If you are holding onto him, the guy is just dead weight. You need to cut him. 6 rushes for 16 yards last week with 1 reception on 1 target for -1 yards. This man has scored more than 10 points since week number 5. Now we got the New Orleans Saints at the Miami Dolphins. Now Devin Neal is a bottom of the barrel start for me this week. Without Alvin Kamara, he is very clearly the RB1 on this team, but being the RB1 on a Tyler Shuck-led offense isn't something that, you want to get happy about. It's not something you throw a lot of weight onto, right? Neal looked good last week with 7 rushes for 18 yards and 5 receptions on 7 targets for 43 yards. The RB22, up against the Falcons. The Dolphins are the 9th best matchup for RBs on a per-game basis. But we have seen the Dolphins lock up great running backs this season. So while he could definitely finish as a top 24 back, the upside doesn't feel great here, in my opinion, just because he's attached to the Saints. The upside of the Saints just never feels fun. He is a fringe running back 3 start for me. The Saints only have 4 running backs on the roster as of right now, and 2 of them are hurt, so that leaves Devin Neal and Aldrick Estime. I would expect Neal to see a majority of the work, so you would not be playing Aldrick Estime. Devon Achane has been one of the most consistent running backs in all of fantasy football. Devon 2 Chains is basically a mortal lock to finish as a top 12 running back most weeks. Before the bye, which was last week, he was the top 11 running back in 4 straight games, and he was a top 8 running back in 3 of 4 of those games. Last time out in Spain, back in week number 11, he was the RB6 with 21 carries for 120 yards and 5 receptions on 5 targets for 45 yards. Achane puts the Dolphins offense on his back on a weekly basis. The Saints are the 15th best matchup for running backs on a per game basis, so ranking him anywhere outside the top 12 would be insane. I expect Achane to hit him with a knuckle sandwich this week. I got him as a must-start top 6 RB on the week. Now, Ollie Gordon seemingly got the RB2 role away from Jalen Wright last game out. Gordon had 39% of the snaps, and Jalen Wright played just 2%. Even with that said, though, things could flip-flop back to Jalen Wright. So, it makes things kind of dicey. I do think, as a Dolphins fan, we should use Ollie Gordon more. And I like his upside, to score touchdowns because he's a, bigger type of guy. He's wide. He's like fucking Doug Martin, the muscle hamster. And he can push his way on into the end zone. So if we do see him start to get a more reliable workload, then I'll change my tune on him and I'll list him as a start. But as of right now, he's just a guy that would be sitting on your bench. Now we got the Atlanta Falcons at the New York Jumbo Jets. Now, Bijan Robinson disappointed last week with Cole's Cash, Kirk Cousins under center. Now, he wasn't so dreadful that you lost your marbles and you smashed your television like a Cowboys fan during the playoffs. But when you expect greatness out of a guy and he finishes outside the top 12, it definitely does hurt a bit. High-end RB2 with 14 rushes for 70 yards and 2 receptions on 2 targets for 37 yards in New Orleans. This week, Bijan is the 7th best matchup for RBs on a per-game basis, so I would expect a Hulk smashing here at the hands of Bijan. He is a must-start top 4 RB for me this week. Now, for Tyler Algier, I say the exact same thing about him every single week, and I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record, but I feel like everyone feels exactly how I do about Tyler Algier. I would not be shocked if this man goes out there and has 15 touches. I also would not be shocked, would not be moved at all, if he had 2 touches. Regardless of his workload, though, he can score. The matchup here is great, so maybe he could fall ass backwards into the end zone, but with his floor not being the best, with 4 of 11 games this season with fewer than 3 fantasy points, I would just prefer to bench him. For the New York Jumbo Jets, the Jets offense showed some life last week now with Tyrod Taylor under center. Now, obviously, he is far from the ideal quarterback, but at least he can throw the ball, which is an upgrade from what Justin Fields could do. Last week, Brees fucked his own team in the ass by fumbling the ball, but it didn't ruin his high-end RB2 showing. 16 rushes for 44 yards with 4 receptions on 4 targets for 75 yards. The Falcons defense is the 5th best matchup for RBs, so while I don't think anyone should feel great about Breece Hall as of right now, just due to the Jets offense as a whole, in such a great matchup, I would expect him to finish as a mid-range running back number 2. Isaiah Davis hasn't seen more than 4 touches over the last 3 games since coming out the bye week with such few touches. Even if the Jets offense continues to build going forward with Tyrod Taylor under center, no one should be playing Isaiah Davis. Now we got the Arizona Cardinals at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now the signs are pointing towards Trey Benson returning this week from his knee injury as he was limited in practice all of last week. Benson would be the RB1 in this scenario with him returning and should see a majority of the touches. This is the 11th best matchup, so he should be able to take advantage of that. Though, when he hasn't played in such a long time, it is entirely possible that the team may not fully thrust him out there. So while he should get a majority of the touches, that is far from a guarantee. I think Trey Benson is great, and I think if they did feed him, he would succeed. But again, that is far from a guarantee. So he is a high-end running back 3 at best for me this week. If Benson plays, Michael Carter would operate as the RB2 due to his pass-catching prowess, and that would drop Bam Knight into the Sean Tucker-esque role with Bucky and Rashad healthy, making Bam unstartable. Carter could fluke a long touchdown reception, which wouldn't shock anyone, but again, it's a fluke for a reason, right? You're not expecting it, so I would leave him on my bench. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Bucky Irving will practice this entire week, and if he's fine on Friday, he will play according to head coach Todd Bowles. We also have to worry about the health of Baker, as if Baker doesn't play, this offense may be sleeping with the fishes under Teddy Two Gloves, Teddy Roosevelt, Teddy Bridgewater. The Cardinals are the 7th best matchup for RBs, but man, am I worried about Bucky. Kind of same scenario as Trey Benson. They might not give him the full load. Pause. They might use just the tip technique, just ease him in. So he is a low-end RB2 for me on the week. With Bucky seemingly back, Rachaad White would be the RB2 in this offense, and we'll see work over Sean Tucker because he fits the RB2 role better. Rachaad, when Bucky was healthy, was not startable. So we will operate under the assumption that this week, even if we do see Rachaad White see more work than normal, because again, I do think it's entirely possible that they ease Bucky Irving in, I still would not feel comfortable playing Rachaad White based on what we've seen out of him this year. Then we got the LA Rams at the Carolina Panthers. Now, despite the Rams raw dogging the Buccaneers on Sunday Night Football, Kyren Williams didn't get in on any of that fun. 12 carries for 46 yards with 1 reception on 1 target for 2 yards with 5.8 PPR points in that game. This comes following 16 plus point showings in 3 straight games. So there's absolutely positively zero reason to panic at all on Kyren Williams. In the 17th best matchup for RBs on a per game basis, I would expect Kyren to finish as a high-end running back too this week. Now, Blake Corum sees enough work to slightly aggravate you if you are someone that has Kyren Williams on your team, but he doesn't do enough to actually become start-worthy. Even if he sees 10 plus touches, which I would expect here, the odds of him scoring more than 6 fantasy points feels incredibly low. So while he is a great handcuff, he is a sit. You might just get hit with the Rico Meek Miller, Reek, like fucking Tyreek Hill, or like the guy from Game of Thrones. Rico Dowdle. It was a weird game last week. Weird game for the Panthers as Bryce Young was out there looking like he forgot which jersey his team wears because he kept throwing the ball straight to the 49ers. This led to a down game for Uncle Rico. 6 rushes for 38 yards with 4 receptions on 4 targets for 36 yards, the RB21. We saw more Chuba than we were used to in terms of snaps with 35% compared to Rico's 65%, but I don't believe that Rico is just going to lose his role. His role is going to get stripped away from him as the RB1 on this team. The matchup here is brutal, though. It is the second worst matchup for RBs. The Rams defense has been incredible, and with Bryce Young's tendency to play quarterback like a fucking blind man, it is hard to truly love Rico Dowdle this week. He has been very consistent, though, so I do have him ranked as a top 24 back. He is a low-end RB2, and even with Chuba's increased workload, I do strongly still believe Rico's the guy, so there's no need to play Chuba Hubbard. Now we move to the 4 p.m. slated games, the cold like Minnesota Vikings at the Seattle Seahawks. Now, coming out of Week 11, a matchup against the Rams in LA where Kenneth Walker put that defense, a great defense, in the figure 4. All eyes were on Kenneth Walker up against the Titans because, as I always say, a blind squirrel will find a nut every once in a while. And while the RB9 finish against the Rams, you know, it was awesome, there was an entirely possible scenario where that was Fugazi, right? Last week in Tennessee, he has 11 rushes for 71 yards, 3 receptions on 4 targets for 30 yards, and a mid-range RB2. Once again, the man got fucking vultured. So we sit in limbo right now. He still appears to be the RB1 on the team, playing 63% of the snaps with 14 touches compared to Charbonnet's 31% of the snaps with 6 touches and a touchdown. The Vikings are the 18th best matchup for RBs. So while I don't feel great about Kenneth Walker right now, he is a fine low-end RB2 since I do expect them to be up late in the game running the ball a ton. For Zach Charbonnet, any given Sunday, he could score multiple touchdowns, and it wouldn't surprise me at all. But with just 6 touches last week, and with Kenneth Walker seemingly earning a bigger piece of the pie, bigger cut of the apple pie on Thanksgiving, add some ice cream on that, I would not be willing to roll the dice here on Sharbs. For the Vikings, whether J.J. McCarthy clears concussion protocol or not, I want nothing to do with Aaron Jones. If Max Brosmer plays, maybe he's able to light a fire under the team's ass. But this is a bad spot for running backs. The Seahawks allowed the 7th least amount of points to RBs on a per game basis, and I would expect them to be down in this game, throwing a bunch, giving Aaron Jones less chances. I still think Aaron Jones is a good running back, even at his age, right? And he has looked great touching the ball over the last 4 games since he returned from injury. But in the situation they're in right now, doesn't even feel like Barry Sanders could save him. I can't justify playing him. If I don't feel comfortable playing the RB1 on the Vikings, I am certainly not playing the second fiddle on the team behind Aaron Jones, who had just 27% of the snaps last week and 16% the week prior. So, Jordan, the numbers, Mason, what do they mean? Belongs on your bench. Now we move to the no one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, even with the Bills taking a big fat L up against the Texans last week on Thursday Night Football, James Cook went to work, and put up big numbers. 17 carries for 116 yards and a tug with 3 receptions on 3 targets for 13 yards, making him have back-to-back finishes as a top 7 RB. This is the 8th worst matchup for running backs on a per-game basis, and while that does leave me slightly concerned, James Cook is the focal point of this offense. We see when James Cook can't get it going, when James Cook can't get it up, he's got some ED in the game. The Buffalo Bills are flopping around like a fish out of water, so I think he's going to be able to finish as a top 12 RB here. I got him as a low-end running back 1. Obviously, if the matchup was better, we'd have him as like a must-start top 6 option. Ty Johnson is the clear RB2 in Buffalo. He is one of those guys that will randomly catch a check down and take that shit straight to the crib, but will most likely see less than 5 touches and disappoint you. So in a bad matchup here, I would just leave him on my bench. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, I know we are all grown adults here, but if anyone has ever seen Cars 3, it is perfect imagery for what is going on here in Pittsburgh. We may have a McQueen is fading moment where Jackson Storm, the up-and-coming racer, surpasses my GOAT, Lightning McQueen. It seems like Kenneth Gainwell may have staked a stronger claim to the Iron Throne of this offense. Last week, Warren had 18 carries for 68 yards and a touchdown, with 50% of the snaps compared to Kenneth Gainwell's 51% of the snaps. Now, this doesn't mean that Jaylen Warren is dead for fantasy football, but it should concern you. Warren is still a mid-range RB2 regardless in the 3rd best matchup for RBs. You gotta feel good here. Kenneth Gainwell outscored Warren last week. Back-to-back games as a top 10 back with 10 rushes for 92 yards and 6 receptions on 6 targets for 30 yards. Now, his top 5 finish against the Bengals in week 11 wasn't a game in which Warren got hurt, so we saw a lot of the workload go the way of Gainwell. So, that's a little fugaz, but he has looked good now in back-to-back games, so clearly feels like the offense wants to give him a little bit more of the work. But I still do strongly believe that Warren is the guy. So that leaves Gainwell being a high-end RB3, but at this point, we have to give him credit for what he has done. Now we move to the Las Vegas Raiders at the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, Ashton Genty's late-game ankle injury is not believed to be severe. According to Pete Carroll, Genty was the RB4 last week in a tough spot against the Browns. Now, I think based on how I just said that, sounds like according to Pete Carroll, Genty was the running back 4 last week, but Ashton Genty's late game ankle injury is not believed to be severe. That's what Pete Carroll said, right? So up against the Browns, it was a bad matchup, right? I'm saying, you know what? I'm a little bit scared about Genty. I think you're always a little bit scared about Genty, right? Because the fact that, the play of Geno Smith is just always going to be a negative factor in my trust of Genty. But the guy's had 15 plus points in 3 of his last 4 games since the bye week, right? This is the 18th best matchup for RBs. So I think Genty's a high-end RB2. Last week, again, against a tough spot against the Browns, 17 rushes for 50 yards and 8 receptions on 8 targets for 58 yards and a touchdown. And that was a game where the Raiders' offense was incompetent. So while I think you're always going to be worried, Genty will never, for the rest of this season, feel like a guy that you feel safe about. I think that would be hard to make a strong argument for you to feel good about Genty. But that doesn't mean, just because, it gets you some butterflies in your stomach, doesn't mean you can't be playing Genty. Raheem Mostert is the definitive handcuff for Genty, but that is all he is. He should get around 4 touches here. I would just leave him on my bench. The thought process for me for the Chargers is that Omarion Hampton will be back this week from the ankle injury as they are returning from the bye. But I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins, so we need to kind of see how things play out. Monitor this scenario closely. If Hampton plays, he would take the reins back as the clear RB1 in the Chargers backfield. And based on the production we have seen out of Vidal, even with the offensive line being dog shit, Hampton still has big upside. In the 15th best matchup for RBs on a per game basis, he would be a high-end RB2. If he was to miss, which again, feels possible, right? It doesn't feel like a guarantee Hampton would be back. It feels like he should be based on what we read, but I would never guarantee that. Vidal would be in the same range. He has been very up and down this season. Literally. Great game, bad game, great game, bad game. His last game was a bad game, so I would expect a bigger game. If Omarion Hampton is in, there's no need to play Vidal, as he won't see anywhere close to the amount of touches that you'd feel comfortable starting him. I do understand that, we talked about it earlier, some of these running backs might get eased in. They might use the just the tip approach, but even if they ease him in, I still think he takes away enough touches to where, maybe he ends up fucking us over and Omarion Hampton doesn't play as well, but I don't think Vidal in that scenario would just magically rise to the occasion and play great. Then we got, cause you waited all day for Sunday night, the Denver Broncos at the left. Hands up, who are we? The Commanders. Now, for the Commanders, Chris Rodriguez does appear to have the lead on the other backs in Washington and had a season-high 15 rushes for 79 yards and a reception on 1 target for 6 yards in Spain up against the Dolphins. He has scored a touchdown in 3 of his last 5 games. But in just one of those games, he scored more than 10 PPR points. If you're in a pickle, he is a perfectly fine start due to the touchdown upside. But with the Broncos being the 4th worst matchup for RBs on a per-game basis, I would have to leave him on my bench. Now, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt has lost his Bill nickname. He lost his job to Chris Rodriguez. No need to waste my breath talking about him. Cut him if you still got him. For the Denver Broncos, without J.K. Dobbins, R.J. Harvey is in the driver's seat of this backfield. With that said, Tyler Bidet and Jaleel McLaughlin will still work in enough to potentially cuck R.J. Harvey and vulture one of his touchdowns, which is actually what happened to him in their last game before the bye up against the Chiefs, as Jaleel found the end zone. Harvey was 11 for 30 in the game running the rock with 3 receptions on 3 targets for 20 yards, a game in which I expected him to struggle due to how great the Chiefs' defense is against the run. Now, he has a significantly better matchup up against the Commanders, who allow the 10th most points to RBs on a per-game basis. I got him as a low-end RB2 this week. Jaleel had 6 carries for 19 yards and a touchdown with 1 reception on 1 target for -5 yards. So again, while it is definitely in the range of outcomes, where we get to the end of this game and Jaleel scores a touchdown, I just don't think you want to take the gamble on a guy that's probably going to get, 5-6-ish touches to score a touchdown. It just, I get the matchups there, but R.J. Harvey also, it's not like R.J. Harvey is some fucking bum in the red zone. We've seen him score touchdowns before this season when Dobbins was healthy. Now we got Monday Night Football, the New York Football Giants at the New England Deflatriots. Now Tyrone Tracy is on a heater. Back-to-back top 13 showings with 23 touches in both games. Last week in Detroit, he had 20 rushes for 62 yards with 3 receptions on 4 targets for 68 yards. He hasn't scored a touchdown since week 7, though, so that does definitely hurt his upside, as it would seem that a majority of the goal line work will be handed to Devin Singletary. The matchup here is brutal, as the Patriots allow the least amount of points to running backs on a per-game basis. So that sucks. Chase Brown did show some chinks in the armor last week, but I still feel far worse about Tracy here than I would normally. On pure volume alone, I think he gets it done enough to be like a high-end RB3, but I definitely do expect a comeback down to earth party here for him compared to the last couple of weeks. Devin Singletary had 14 carries for 47 yards. He is not very efficient and relies heavily on the touchdown. With this matchup being as bad as it is, you can't even really speculatively start him, as I think it's very unlikely that he does find the end zone. Now, for the Patriots, with Ramondre Stevenson back, Travion Henderson disappointed me. Just 11.1 PPR points as a low-end RB2. But, and there's a big but, shout out to Violet Myers, it wasn't because Henderson's workload was fucking snapped like a twig, right? It wasn't because they peeled back his workload. It was because he was inefficient. 18 carries for 66 yards and 3 receptions on 4 targets for 15 yards. The week prior, when he put the Jets defense in a body bag, he had just 3 more touches compared to last week, without Ramondre Stevenson. So as things stand right now, I still do believe that the keys to the backfield, the key fob, is in the hands of Travion Henderson. Facing a Giants defense that just let Jahmyr Gibbs drop a 50-burger on him, welcome to Good Burger, and allow the 2nd most points to RBs on a per-game basis, I expect Henderson to bounce back. He took an L, but now it's time to bounce back. Shout out to Big Sean as a low-end RB1. Ramondre saw 6 rushes for 5 yards with 1 reception on 2 targets for 5 yards in his return game on 31% of the snaps compared to Henderson's 65%. So while it is possible they could ramp him up going forward, I wouldn't come remotely close to starting him based on what we saw last week. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you ended up enjoying today's video, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below like it owes you some money. I hope you guys do all have a great Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for each and every single one of you guys. Love you guys so much. Hope you guys have a great Black Friday as well. We'll be live on Thursday before the games. We'll be live on Friday. We'll be live on Sunday as well. I greatly appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys for everything that you've given me this season and as well for all the years making this content. Again, it means everything to me. I do love you guys so much. Hope you guys all have a great Thanksgiving. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Thank you guys so much. Have a great one. Check out all the videos on the screen if you haven't seen them already. As always, good week.